Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. A lot has changed over the past few months, and I thought that I would share with you certain things that I have found to be very helpful during this time of the COVID-19 pandemic that we are all going through. I hope I never have to make this video again in my life, but right now many of us are still in quarantine, whether it is like government imposed or self-imposed. So hopefully what I share in this video would be helpful to all of you listening and watching. Thank you for clicking on this video, and I hope that this video will be worth your while. One of the first things that I have changed in my life are certain habits, and there are two habits that have become a very special part of my life that weren't there before. So the first habit is very simple. I had this book which is called Every Day, a 5-year memory book. So I purchased this in 2018, but I've never been really consistent with it. What it's really for is you can write 4 or 5 lines of diary entry into this book every single day for 5 years. So you can see on the same date what you had written on the previous year. This year, especially since 25th March, I have been writing in this every single day. Since it's 4 or 5 lines per entry, it fits in enough of what you want to say. I do it before sleeping, and it helps me reflect on the day and just put down the highlights or put down what's going through my mind. For example, on May 10th, I wrote, "It's the foolish who at times like these build walls. Rewatch Black Panther and I remember why I love superhero movies. They remind me of what I stand for." That has become such an important habit for me just because it forces me to think, it forces me to reflect. And on the days that I feel that there was nothing good that happened, on the days when I feel like there was no highlight, it forces me to realize that definitely there is a highlight even in those days. The second habit that I've started following consistently since the lockdown is the habit of taking my vitamins. So I have never been the person who could do this consistently. For some reason, I would always forget. But since the lockdown happened and there was a lot of talk about immunity being very important to protect yourself from the coronavirus, I think that kind of pushed me to start. But I think I continued just because I forced myself to form this habit. I created a routine in which I took these vitamins at a particular time of the day. I also created a system in which it would become easier for me. The system I use is an old person system. No offense to old people, but this is what usually you would see your grandmas or grandpas use, which is a pill box. It is a circular pill box, and it has these stickers on them of the days of the week, and you kind of put your pills inside. Once you finish that day's pills, you unscrew it and put it at the bottom so that you have the next day's pills on top. This is something that helps me. It reminds me that I need to take my pills, and it's there in this box, and I replenish it every single week so that I don't forget. And if I forget, I can see that I've forgotten, so I kind of get back into routine. My favorite thing to do or favorite pastime during quarantine has been spending time with my family. If you've seen my quarantine vlog, I think I've talked about this, but I am basically right now living with my parents. Previously, I wasn't living with them. I was living separately, and they used to come over to my house during the weekends. Now, because of the lockdown, they are living with me. That means that I get to spend a lot of time with them. That also means that since I was 16, this is probably the most time I've spent with them in the same house. That is something that I'm thankful for. I know a lot of you aren't with your family right now, but for me, who's been mostly out of the house since I've been 16, I think this has been a good thing that has happened to me, that I get to spend so much time with them. I do work with them, but I think this has given us more time with each other, even after work and on a daily basis. They've been cooking a lot of food for me, which has been great. My favorite workout during this quarantine period has been running. If you follow me on Instagram, you know that already. I have been enjoying my running during this time. I used to run before this as well, but I have been more consistent with my running since this quarantine has started. So I've been enjoying running not just for the physical exercise, but just also for my mental sanity. It forces me not to think. It forces me to focus on my breathing. It forces me to focus on what's in front of me, and in that way I can kind of let go of all my thoughts that are already in my mind and let other thoughts come in which are actually necessary for my life. Now, coming to some of my favorite apps. Apart from the usual apps that are on my phone and I use religiously, I have been using two new apps for my work basically, and they've very easily become some of my favorites, especially to collaborate with people. I've been working from home right from 25th March, and all of my office has been working from home as well. And so to communicate and collaborate, the two apps that have become my favorite have been Zoom and Microsoft Teams. Now, Zoom, as you all know, is a video calling app, and we've been using that a lot for a lot of our meetings and just discussions. And Microsoft Teams have been mostly for like collaborating on work and just discussing about things like chatting on it. Both these apps are on my phone, on my tab, as well as on my laptop, and depending on what I'm doing at the time, I use it. And they have been very helpful in communicating with people, just having that level of connection with people and engagement with people. And I think that is very important, especially when you are so isolated and having to work individually, separately, away from your usual office environment. I think it's very important to communicate. That's one of the things I've learned during this time, is that even though I do enjoy being alone, I do crave human connection, and I love human connection, and I love talking to people. I love seeing their faces, and both Zoom and Microsoft Teams have helped me in maintaining that engagement, especially when it comes to work. Now, moving on to something lighthearted. All the video streaming apps have been something that all of us have been glued to, whether it's Netflix or Amazon Prime or YouTube. And I want to share with you some of my favorites from each of these. To begin with, when this quarantine started, I was very busy. I had a lot to do because we were shifting from working from the office to working from home, and there were a lot of things to be done. And in those days, like the initial days, I couldn't for the life of me watch anything serious. I couldn't watch crime, I couldn't watch drama, I couldn't watch documentaries, I couldn't watch action. I couldn't watch the usual shows that I normally watch, just because I think they were too serious, and at the time life was also very serious. So I leaned towards more light-hearted shows. And most of the light-hearted shows are something that I've watched for years, and those are shows like Friends, Gilmore Girls, Big Bang Theory, those kind of things. And I kind of rewatched them. They were shorter episodes. I could just put them on in the background, watch them over lunch. But when we entered into the third month, I think everything kind of settled down, my mind settled down, and I started getting back into more serious cinema. And that's when I saw the series on Netflix, which was When They See Us. And if you don't know about it, it's a must watch. It's a story about 5 young kids who were charged with rape and assault of a woman in Central Park in New York City. They were found guilty and sentenced to jail time, but they actually hadn't committed the crime. That real true story was made into a television series, and that was the first serious thing I watched in months. And that was like the hardest thing to watch, but I watched it. I also watched an interview by Oprah of the cast of that television series, as well as the 5 men whose story that actually was. It's titled When They See Us Now. I think more than the television series, the interview with the 5 guys hit me the most. The whole thing of racism being so institutionalized in that country, and not only in that country, I think racism is institutionalized in so many other countries as well, including our own, in so many different ways. And then seeing those interviews with those guys and seeing how it affected their lives, how it affected their worldview, how it affected their perspectives, how it affected how they think, how they feel. It was just so hard, because you could see, because there were 5 different people with 5 different sentences, 5 different experiences, even though they were tried for the same crime that they did not commit. It affected them in different ways, and that was so obvious in that interview. I think that was the best thing I could watch after 2 months of watching light fluff, because I had to get back to reality. It's not all rainbows and roses. There are things happening in this world, and even if I personally am not experiencing it, there are others who are experiencing it, and that was a good reminder for me. The other thing, moving on from what I was talking about, the other thing that I've really been enjoying is watching travel videos. If you know me, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that I love traveling. I love the whole process of traveling, and so I've been watching a lot of travel vlogs, and especially during this time I found a YouTube couple called Kara and Nate, and their channel name is Kara and Nate, and they make amazing videos. And the best part is I actually am not watching their videos of countries or cities or places. I'm actually watching their videos of transit. So I'm really enjoying their time in airports, their time on buses, on trains, in cars, when they travel from one place to the other. I know people just like to reach the destination and that's when their travel begins, but for me it's always the process. I love the process and they document the process. The next thing that has become a very important part of my life, that was a very important part of my life even before this, but has become even more important during this time of quarantine, is coffee. So that's my favorite quarantine drink, and I've been drinking like copious amounts of coffee. I don't know if that's the healthiest thing, but I've been drinking black coffee, so it's no milk, no sugar, nothing in it. So except for the caffeine, everything should be fine. But yeah, I think that's just something that I've kind of latched on to, is coffee. I'm not someone who gets affected by caffeine. I can like drink a cup of coffee and go to sleep, so it doesn't affect my sleep. But I know I shouldn't be drinking as much, but yeah, that's just something that has become a part of my routine. My favorite coffee has been this blue Tokai coffee, which I got off Amazon. Now the next thing I wanted to share with you is my favorite way to get through a bad day. Before all this happened, I was a person who, even if I woke up kind of on the wrong side of the bed, I could trick my mind to becoming normal again and get on with my life. I had learned to realize that just because I woke up in a certain state of mind, it doesn't mean I have to carry that state of mind with me till the end of the day. But when this quarantine happened, it became a little more difficult to move past a day which started a little bit iffy. Like, you know when you're having a bad day. It took me a while to get into how do I change my day? How do I make my day better? How do I make myself feel better? And I stumbled upon two things. So I did it two ways, and it depends on what particular day that was. So one of the things that I did was I tried to do the things that normally bring me satisfaction or joy. Not like fleeting joy or momentary joy, like actual joy. Certain kinds of books that I read, certain conversations that I have, or certain TV shows or movies that I watch, they remind me of what I stand for and they kind of pull me out of the funk. So that is one thing I did. I just kind of leaned into those feelings that I had that day and did everything possible to uplift myself. Second thing that I did was focusing on becoming productive. So there is a tendency when you feel overwhelmed, when you feel anxious, when you feel like something is off, to just like lay there, watch something, binge something, and hog some good food and do nothing. I found that a little bit counterproductive for me, just because it made things worse for me. So what I did was the opposite. I started doing more things. I started doing more chores. I started taking up more projects. Even the smallest thing, if I could accomplish it and tick it off my list, I think pushed me in the right direction. So these are my quarantine favorites. I hope that this was useful for you, and I thank you so much for the time you took to watch this video.